Hi, everybody. This is Vladimir Akuna, and I have an amazing Sherry Dunn here again. We've had her before. You've seen her on a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stories, which my daughter is absolutely in love with. And there are her favorite stories. And I'm going to start with the first one. The first one is Maddie and Jasmine. And the second one was Maddie and Jasmine Go Shopping. I know the light is a little bit shiny there. And the last one is Maddie and Jasmine Settle In, which is Elizabeth's favorite, but she loves them all. And Sherry is an pet advocate. She's an animal rescue advocate. I'm going to correct myself. Discovered her passion through writing, and she has been writing absolutely powerful stories, not just by writing them, but actually the messages she leaves and the impact she leaves on people's lives in the shelters. She's cooperating, and there's such a huge message in what she has. Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you, Vladdy. This is fun.
Oh, I always love it. So I'm going to ask you the first question. Before we met, I love Sherry's passion, and it's her purpose. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your last beautiful book on Maddie and Jasmine Settle In, and obviously how it interacts with your purpose?
Maddie and Jasmine Settle In is the third book in a trilogy. And each book in the trilogy, that going right there, each book in the trilogy is a standalone, excuse me, is a standalone. So if you bought book 3, you wouldn't miss anything, but it's such a, to me, it's such a wonderful story in all 3 of the books, because book 1 has Maddie's problem of being bullied at school. She solves the problem. She wants a cat. So they go to the animal shelter and she gets a cat. And there's more to the story than that. But then in book 2, and I try to have my books mean something and teach children something without being too preachy or didactic. Just give them a message and a child will absorb it and then run with it. So book 2 is Maddie and Jasmine Go Shopping. So they're leaving the shelter. Maddie says, we have to get things for Jasmine. And she got a list from the woman that worked at the shelter about what you get cats. And that's something that children need to know. You just don't go get a cat or any pet, and that's it. There's other things you have to do. So she's in the pet store and they're shopping, both Maddie and Jasmine. Book 3, I have to say, I thought book 1 was my favorite, and it still is pretty high on the list. But book 3 is just, it's one of these stories that, again, it's a continuation. It tells you what went on when she was, she was bullied by the kids, one particular child at school, and then what she did. She got all this the supplies for the cat. In book 3, Maddie and Jasmine Settle In. That book, again, gives you a little bit of what went on prior, but it also comes to fruition what a pet can do for a child or anybody, really. So what happens is Jasmine is a little bit afraid when she gets into this house and everything. Maddie thinks the cat doesn't like her. And she goes to school and she thinks, I don't think Jasmine likes me. She decides, she says, wait a minute, Jasmine picked me at the shelter. Now, Maddie was never picked for anything, ever, at school. So she says, I'm going to let her know I love her. So she goes home. When she goes home from school, it tells what all they do together and how she gets Jasmine to really kind of like her, start liking her. And then she has to go to, it moves along, and then Maddie has to go to show and tell at school, which she doesn't want to do at all because she was bullied by the same kids and everything. But she decides, she looks at Jasmine, and she says, I'm going to take you. So she takes her to school and does all these tricks and everything. She shows all these tricks. And then at the very end, it's very difficult for me to even, when I do my book readings on stage, I usually do them at the Lyric Theater. And the last page is always the page that gets me in my heart. And on the last page, the boy that, and I don't want to, I don't want to tell the whole story, but then on the other hand, if you're a parent and you want to know what, yes, there you go. And you want to know if the book is good or not. And I'll read this last story. Maddie felt her shoulders relax. Now this is Brian coming towards her on the playground. Maddie felt her shoulders relax as he said, "Hey, Maddie, Jasmine's cool." "Thanks," said Maddie. Brian touched Maddie's arm. "You're cool too." "I'm sorry I've been mean to you on the playground. From now on, I pick you to play soccer on my team." That's what I have a difficult time reading, because it's so sensitive and it just shows, the whole thing comes to a full story. And the cat not only changed Maddie's life, but in my estimation, she also changed Brian's life.
You know, I love that. And because we have a new puppy, I can relate to when something is going on, kids actually feel easier to talk to Ruby because it's just like the animal's there for them. They feel the love, they feel like nobody's answering them back, and they can just say whatever they mean. And they look at them with that, you know, like kitty and puppy eyes, and they feel them. You know, they always happy, they always welcoming us. They don't go, "Oh, you upset me in the morning," you know, like it doesn't matter what happens. Then you walk into the door and that doggy, like the puppy, the kitty, and whatever animal, you know, they're waiting, showing you the love. I mean, that's something we humans could learn from, because, you know, like we get upset about things and then we just have, you know, like we want to show that, "Oh, I'm still about the morning." But I love the story we talked about. And I'd love you to tell everyone the story about you and your mom and how you were giving each other presents for Christmas and what you decided to do, because I think it's a really powerful message, and it's really important for us parents to encourage this to be done, really, and show kids what really has a real meaning, because what you're doing and the messages you're getting, it's so powerful, and it really is important in the world. Because also when you were talking about Maddie and Jasmine go shopping, it shows kids responsibility. It shows that, oh, you have to think. It's the same like them getting ready for the school, but they can see, because when you're learning about how to look after your pet, it's not about, oh, if you get it, you have to deal with it. You know, it's not, it's that responsible part for them to, oh, I need to think what I'm missing here. And it allows them to be a really better person for themselves.
Well, when you talk about the story about my mother, what we used to do is, and I was an adult. I lived in Maryland. She lived in Florida, which is where I live now. And I'd come down to visit at Christmas time, and we would always exchange gifts. And when you've got somebody living in cold country and somebody living in warm country, clothes are kind of out to choose, because, you know, that area doesn't have a lot for you.
Yeah.
So, and so we'd give gifts to each other, and they were nice gifts, and we all appreciate them and everything. But they're gifts that it was so hard. Christmas shouldn't be, or the holidays shouldn't be, something that is a job, or something that is oh no, I got to find something for my mom and all that. So we got together one day, and I said, at one Christmas, and I said, "You know what? Why don't we do something different?" Because she was an animal rescue advocate also. And in fact, one of her dogs at the time was a rescue. I said, why don't we go to 3 of your favorite animal shelters, and we'll go in and we will write a check to them, and a piece, you know, separately. And I said, instead of getting gifts that, you know, you struggle over and everything, this is no struggle. And I said, and I will give you 3 of my favorite shelters. And one of them was a farm, an animal rescue farm. And I said, I will give you 3 names, and that's what we'll do. She loved it. It made the holidays so much easier. It made the holidays one of those things where well, of course, me being away from her, that far away, it was one of those things where, oh, I was so happy to go, because then I'd say, when are we going to get in the car? When are we going to go to the shelters? Because once we were at the shelters, we also got to, you know, talk to some of the animals and everything. And so it kind of gave the animals a gift also. But we did that for years, and it was the best thing we could have done.
I love it because it's so fulfilling and it's a real, real passion. And, that is so important for kids as well. Well, I wanted to ask you about what is next for you, because I know that they're kind of like trilogy of the books, but what is there any more stories, or what do you have anything else going on with your books? Tell us
My sleeve.
secrets, some
Well, I
secrets
do.
behind the doors.
I do. And you had asked me earlier, and I didn't quite get to it, but my purpose in life, I've finally found it. I've had a good life. I have no complaints. I had 3 different careers with the federal government, with a stock market, and with a private consulting firm. And they were all, I love them all. But now that when I retired from my last career as a consultant, I found my purpose. I mean, I was always an animal rescue advocate, but not to the level that I am now. And I want people, I'm trying to educate kids, because once children are educated, then my hope, and I don't demean kids because they're smart. And if once they know, then the next generation of people coming forward perhaps will clear the shelters or do things that will help these animals even more so, and give them the kindness that is necessary for that. So that's why I wrote the Maddie and Jasmine books. And I found that when I had a little girl come up in a restaurant to me, and I'm sitting there eating, and this child and her family getting ready to leave, and she came running over to my table, and she looked up at me, and I looked down at her, and she said, "I love your books." And I
Oh.
thought, well, we all 3, I was with 2 of my other friends. We all 3 cried, of course. And the child was just so sweet. And so I thought, I like Maddie and Jasmine. I love the trilogy. I'm going to end it there, because
Mhm.
don't dilute something that's already good. So here's what I did. I decided, okay, I have a new writing coach, because in my writing, this writing coach said, why do you need a coach? You seem to be doing fairly well. And I said, well, I want to get better. I want to get better at writing, and I want to get better understanding what children need in their books, and I want children to read. So she said, why don't you take a story and have the animals talk? I said, really? She said, yeah, have the animals talk. And I said, that's brilliant. So I wrote my next, well, actually, in between the second series I've got in a different series, I've got an activity book, and it goes along as a companion. It'll look similar to this, so that I mean, you can look at all 3 of my books, and you can see that they're all similar because of
Yeah.
the titles and the coloring and everything. So there's a companion book, an activity book. It's got mazes and puzzles and coloring pages and all kinds of stuff. So that's coming out, and that's in layout right now. So that should be coming out soon. But the second series is the Jasmine Paws and Tails series. And that's about Jasmine goes back, the first book, I'll just tell you what the first book's about. It's called Baxter and the Power of Mud.
Ooh.
Baxter is a dog that has been at a shelter for 999 days.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
one of the shelters that I support had the name's been changed. That dog's name was Mischief, was at the shelter for 999 days.
Oh,
That was so
really?
sad, yes. And on the 1000th day, got adopted. So I took the idea of an animal being in the shelter too long, and Baxter loved to play in the water. He just loved to play in the water, and he was always full of mud and everything like that. He loved to roll in the ground and everything. And this is at the shelter. And one day he comes in from the outside, and he sees Jasmine. And real quiet, like, he says, "Jasmine, what are you doing here? Your human didn't bring you back, did she?" Because again, I give kids a ton of credit. A child will think, now, wait a minute, what's Jasmine doing back at the shelter? Because the message I want to put out there is not to take the pet back once you got it. It's a lifelong commitment for that pet. So what I said was, so Jasmine says, oh no, it's all good. Maddie is volunteering here at the shelter and she brings me with her. So that's how I get over that hump.
Yeah, that's great.
And then there are two more animals that are sort of in the same situation. They hang out and everything there. And two of them are dogs. And one of them is named after, and she already knows this, but at my publisher, one of the marketing people there has a dog named Lucky. And another one has a dog named oh geez, all of a sudden I forgot it. Anyway, so I put those two dogs in there. So they're like a little gang, and they help the protagonist, which in this case is a pet that's for some reason has been there at the shelter or has a problem, and helps them get adopted.
Oh, firstly, my friend has a dog called Lucky in Czech
Lucky?
Republic. Yes, she's called Lucky.
Lucky.
And
Rory.
I love Rory. Oh, Rory is the other one.
Rory's the other one. And Rory's a doodle and kind of prissy acting, sort of. And Lucky's just a little dog. He's always sleeping, but he's always at the ready to help.
I love how it's interacting, and I really love the further sort of steps, because the truth is, like, especially after COVID, this happened a lot. People were bored, they got animals, and the shelters after COVID were filled. Because all of a sudden people realize that, oh, we're back at the work. And I love your message, because so what? It doesn't mean that now you throw it away. It's not a book to sort of, and not even books, even books you keep, but genuinely it's the relationship. It's the special bond, and it's the responsibility we take. We don't just have a kid and say after 2 years, oh, you know what, actually the kids are hard, I'm just gonna take them away. Like you learn, you evolve, you have to, and it's never easy, like you have to go through challenges just as much as the joy. But the joy the animals bring and how they change and impact the kid's life, even I can see it from a different perception, of course, having one in the home. And is it changing many things? It is, because we now have to consider, I wouldn't be as much at home as I am now, and I'm trying to like work mostly from here, because otherwise the dog's alone for a long time. So we start being more considerate, seeing things differently. It's changing everyone's life for better. What would you say? I love when you're talking. I mean, I have so many questions, but I have to ask, what's your intention? Because that's the highest vibrational power. Like, what is the intention for your books and the story? Somewhere all the way out there, what do you see, apart from what you already mentioned, the kids, like the next generation? Is that actually the main intention? You could brilliantly fill in.
It's part of my intention. The original intention, and this is what I thought I would, how I would do it, would be to write children's books. My original intention, and now it's even stronger, is I want the term humane. In fact, I belong to the Association of Professional Humane Educators to teach children and hopefully parents, because hopefully they are guiding their children, but to be humane to animals. Animals are here for a reason, and even if it's a simple reason, like you coming home to Ruby and me coming home to Jasmine, I want them to have a better life. That's my intention, to have animals to have a better life. And especially in the shelters, that's where we see them the most. That's where the largest population of these. But with all animals, I mean it's something that I go to the shelters, I help them out, I support them. I want to be a part of that so that I can see what more I can do to help. Right now I'm working with one of the shelters to try to get a reading program. A lot of shelters in the country have these, but have a reading program for kids that have reading challenges to read to cats. Now that's not, a lot of them read to dogs and that sort of thing. But I suggested, why don't, to this one shelter, why don't we try to do it with cats?
Mhm.
Because what happens is, and especially with dogs, and cats, we're trying that with cats, but what they try to do is the shelters that have reading programs have found that when a child comes in and reads to, and they have a program, you can't just walk in, you have to have
Yeah.
an organized program. But when a child comes in and reads to, let's say a dog,
Mhm.
what that does is a lot of times dogs are in shelters. Well, all animals are in shelters through no fault of their own. That, I mean, that is a given, no fault of their own. One of the stories I have is about a dog whose owner died, and they took it and put it right in the shelter, and then what it goes through. But a lot of these dogs cower in the back of their little kennel run,
Yeah.
because they're either frightened or they've been there a
Mhm.
long time and they've given up hope. The animals will
Yeah.
give up hope, or they just, they just don't know what to do. So a lot of them
Mhm.
cower in the back. Well, when a child starts reading, and they found this to be true, when a child starts reading to an animal, and you sit there and they teach you how to do this, you don't face an animal head on like we're doing. You face sideways so that you don't seem overpowering. But they'll find that that dog will come to the front of the cage and listen to you read. And they have found that dogs that are at the front of the cages are more adoptable and
Mhm.
get adoptable more often than those cowering in the back of the cage. So it's kind of it's a big win-win, because
Oh
the,
yeah.
the animal gets attention, if nothing else.
Mhm.
So the animal gets attention, the child reads to a non-judgmental entity.
Mhm.
So if they
Love
had
that.
poor reading skills, they improve,
Mhm.
and the pet just might get adopted.
You
So,
know, that's the story that actually melted my heart with one of the previous interviews we did when you were telling me about how you were reading with the boy, and the
oh
boy
yeah.
really found it. To me, that is really, and I can see it. Kids just can talk when they feel sad. They call Ruby and they talk to her, and then they fine.
Mhm.
And often, most of the times, they don't need any more sort of like dwelling on anything. They just want to let it out. They feel the love and understanding from the animal. We have a local, it's a old person's home, and they are specializing for those who have dementia and Alzheimer's. And they were saying that they were bringing in cats, dogs, and now even a horse. And the
Yeah.
response of these people to the animals, it's incredibly high, and they becoming healthier and more responsive just because they have the interaction with the animals.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
there is a huge, huge, huge part of what you're saying, and really a huge need, as you described. It is your
mhm.
intention, but there is a need for us to do this more often and be more open to it.
Well, there is and the reason I reached back there, I got this book because I read this, The Gentle Barn. I have a blog and I put in various things each week. And one of them a couple weeks ago was The Gentle Barn. And it is, they take in abused farm animals and
Mhm.
pet. And this book I got is called Cow Hug Therapy.
Really? Oh, I love that.
Now, a lot of people think that's silly, but it's not. And this is something that's really starting up, because what they do, even with adults, especially adults, is, and these cows, they usually have the barn set up and stuff, although these are free roaming cows, but they'll come in, and people, this one woman had, she had lost, or she had a baby, and I think at 3 months, the baby died. And the woman was obviously terribly distraught and terribly upset, and going to therapy that just was not bringing her out of her, out of her funk. And so they have this cow therapy. So she decided to try that. So she went there, and the thing that people come back with is, and like the cow's laying down usually, and this woman would go in and she would lean up against that cow and start breathing at the same rate the cow was breathing. And it was also, as she was an adult, a larger animal. It was a larger entity. It's almost like a child going to a mother, you know, and it was bigger, and it's it was an hour long thing, and it's incredible. It's incredible therapy. But again, the animals, see, everything has a purpose. And the animal doesn't have to think about, oh, what's my purpose today? I had to think of, or it dawned on me when I started writing these books. I know what my purpose is. An animal knows. And when, like with the little boy that you're talking about, when he just wanted to learn to read like everybody else did. And I saw that in him, and that was incredible. And that's why I want kids to learn to read, because it's just and even if you go in and talk to animals and stuff, you know, that's better than nothing. And then people can see, you know, what the situation is, and hopefully I want Jasmine, this is what I said, I want Jasmine to be the like the support system for kids with animals. I want her to be the ambassador to shelter animals, because she was there for 3 years before I got her.
It's a long time for an animal to be apart. You know, I love Jasmine. Do you see her on screen? I mean, you know, like more famous, like Jasmine shines over Garfield.
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact, and my I've told several people this, and my previous writing coach kind of said, well, I envision Jasmine to be so popular, whether it be, well, on screen would be a nice thing with her books, and I'm trying to get Maddie out of the picture. Not that I don't like Maddie, but Jasmine can come in and help in so many ways. But I foresee her being in the Macy's Day Parade, one of those big balloons.
Yes, that's amazing. That is really great to have like a visual.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
like I can see even like toys made where people actually, all these children are reading to Jasmine, you know, like that's part of because they do like stroking. And that is actually really great when and I know how kids, you know, like if live animals are perfect, but obviously there is one Jasmine and she needs to impact the world around. She can't be everywhere at the same time, but she can really.
Yeah, I'm coming up with plush toys also.
Oh,
I'm
great.
working on that. So a plush toy, just to have kind of something to hang on to. But I have to tell you briefly, Jasmine actually was sick last week, and I had to take her to the emergency room. And she's fine now. She's fine after medication and stuff. But she's 11 years old. So, you know, you have to kind of watch. That's another thing. Watch your pets. I've got all kinds of ideas about how they're how-to books for kids, like how to approach a dog, how to approach a cat, how to do this, how to do that. But they have you sit outside, and they take your pet in, and they do all this checking, come back, and they tell you what the issues are. And then you say, yeah, go with it. So I'm sitting there in the car, and I'm concerned about her, but I knew she was in good hands. They took her in the building. Then the vet came out, and he came out, and he said, was telling me everything, you know, what he found and all that kind of stuff. And I said, and he said, but you know, she should be fine. We're putting her on medication. We're doing this and that. And I said to him, I like to market all the time. So I said to him, do you realize you are talking to a famous cat and taking care of a famous cat? He said, no, really? And so I happen to always carry my bookmarks
I
with
love
me.
it. That's great.
So I said, well, here, this just proves she's a famous cat. He said, okay.
I love that. But you know what? That is really important, because then if you told kids that there is a famous cat coming to the vet, that vet can actually be a famous cat vet. And you know, it is really something that kids look into. And I love that is great point you've made about I know that when we've got something like Ruby's new to us, she's been with us for what, over 2 weeks. And there are things we just don't know. So we're always like, she coughs and we're panicking and thinking, is she choking or does she needs this? So the awareness and the guidance for kids, just brings a better life for them as well, because when we know, we just approach things with ease and with responding rather than reacting. And it is really the knowledge, and for them to have a deeper understanding about the animals and knowing what to do as well. Because like that some of them, unless you have a pet, they don't know there is a vet. Obviously, I'm talking younger kids. So
Yeah,
explaining to them all these things happen with them as well. We have to take them in, they have to be looked after. And I could see there is a great idea, and I know we are coming to the end. And before I forget, I'd like everyone to go and see Sherry has a website, which is beautiful, and she has a blog. She's got lots of opportunities. I know she was doing something with kids writing. Do you still do that, Sherry?
with kids, what?
Kids were writing like an article or.
Oh, well, what I was doing, and it's hard for me to get anybody to do it, is I wanted to have an actual rescue story where I had and a child write it, or anybody can write it, but a rescue story about a nice rescue for their pet, and a picture of the pet and a picture of of the person, and so that people know there are beautiful rescue stories out there. I did have a girl that was 11 years old writing them for me, but she got into some other things. But if you people go on my website, or my blog on my website, there's guidelines there. And it's at sherrydunn.com, and there's guidelines there of what you do. And sometimes if I don't get a story, because I always print one in per month, I'll get a shelter to give me one, and they've got lots of rescue stories.
Yeah. It can be any animal, right? So
it can
kids
be
can
any animal that's a pet. And also, if I print it, then if I put it in my blog, I donate $100 to that person's favorite animal shelter.
Oh,
per
that's
month.
sweet.
One per month.
So,
Yeah.
so reach out. I will put Sherry's details underneath. So go and visit her website. I do encourage you to ask your children, because there are always great stories. But an idea I had for you was, we went to zoo on Saturday. Well, it's kind of like a safari park, and they have this hippo section, and they've done a new path. And when they finished it, they must have led the hippo to walk on the path, because you can see a real prints of the hippo prints, and all the children went gathering there, and they loved the idea, and they were like comparing their hands with the paw. So that could be a great idea for you, like having a real pose of Jasmine put on the door of a shelter or something, where you give Jasmine a high five, or seeing them on a carpet, have her walking on the red carpet with the black paws, and just use that as a line. I thought about you, actually. I knew we're meeting today, so I thought that's a great idea, because I could see the huge interaction of kids, and I must say it kind of was really great. I didn't even think that but they were really like comparing how big the paw, that the print was, as opposed to their foot. And so those are great ideas, so they can relate, and they can have a piece of Jasmine with them as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Vladdy, thank you for that idea. I've got so many ideas also for books and stuff that can be done for kids and to help shelters, because proceeds to the books go to the shelters. So, all the books that you buy, proceeds go to the animal shelters. And I just wrote up a 10-year plan a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to be with the writing situation for quite a while. But just one quick thing. That proceeds do go to the shelters. And someone asked me, well, which shelter do you pick? The one that needs it the most at the time. And that happened a couple weeks ago, that I got, there was enough money to pay for this dog. There was a dog at one of the shelters. His name, he was a bull mastiff. And if anybody knows what those are huge dogs. And he was 2 years old, and he weighed 140 pounds. And his name was Tiny. But anyway, Tiny had a torn Achilles. Now, you've got a dog that big, and he's got a torn Achilles, which has to be repaired. What are his, what's his road to adoption? It's going to be a pretty long road. So this is what happened. I was out there and I saw him, but I didn't want to go near where he was, because I didn't want him to get up, So I asked about him, and we talked about it, and I said, I'll tell you what, I will, out of the book fund,
Mhm.
I will pay for his surgery if you find him a foster. So they were trying to find, because they didn't want to, he had to be fostered, not keeping him in the kennel, trying to rehab. So they said they found a foster. Then that person backed out. Then they found another foster, and that person backed out. So I was sending vibes out into the universe. We've got to get him a foster. So I took the check out on a Saturday morning, and I gave him the check. And the one woman that I deal with, she gave me a big hug, and she said, guess what? I said, he's got a foster? She said, well, not exactly. He was adopted.
Aww.
And he was adopted by a family, or these two people that knew how to rehab people, because the guy was a soccer player and had done something to his shoulder. And so they knew how to rehab him. So that's
Oh,
where he
that's
is.
beautiful. You know,
Mhm.
that's something where you could even say Jasmine helped Tiny.
Yeah,
Because
well,
that is another good deed. Actually, it's the deed of Jasmine that helped. Obviously, she wouldn't do it without you. So it is really your, but that's why the connection is made always.
well, and the people support. Anybody that ever supports things like that needs to pat themselves on the back, because these are the kind of things we don't see.
Yeah, it's true. That is
These are
very true.
so,
And
but
that's why I love that you're doing a blog and actually people where all the stories can be read, and actually kids read more and more stories, because sometimes you don't even think about the stuff that happens. And by reading it, it brings us more awareness. Is there any final thought you have for your beautiful audience?
well, thank you very much for supporting this intention. Because if it weren't for the people that are buying the books, if it weren't, well, not just buying the books, but educating. I'm glad my books are educating kids and educating. Some adults might not know some of the things that I put out there. So I just want to thank people for their attention and their concern and their care for animals. I mean, they're here for us. We need to be here for them.
Thank you, Sherry, for sharing all with us. And I thank you for writing this, because these are impacting really greatly my daughter and myself too. So I absolutely love what you do and wish you all the best. And I will put all Sherry's links. You can directly contact her, find her and read more about her, and share. Just share the books like with all your friends, buy them for your grandchildren and anyone in you, because they really could help further. And you never know which child really needs to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you.